The beach has a special way of smoothing even the most ragged edges. Time to hit the beach!
So, Avatar's on Netflix.
I got my eye on you.
Wanna try?
Alright, hot take that I'm sure you've never heard before. Avatar's really good. Like, really good. Like, really just on a whole other level good. The animation, the music, the acting, the characters. It can be heartbreaking one moment, then funny as hell the next. All while providing some of the best action sequences ever seen on American television. It's as close to perfect as a television show can be, and that's probably why there's mountains of videos talking about how great the show is. So what more could I really add to this discussion? Well, I want to talk about something people have complained about with the show, and talk about why it's actually a huge positive, which is the filler episodes. I think this criticism comes mainly from a modern audience perspective, especially with the rise of prestige television. I think a consequence of shows like Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, and The Sopranos that all have these long, overarching plots that span the whole series is that viewers now expect every episode to contribute to it. And any episode that stands on its own or is filler is automatically bad or can be skipped, which I don't agree with. While there are certainly examples of shows that don't do filler episodes well, and it can be very frustrating when you're stuck wanting the plot to move forward, but you have to spend time with something that seems inconsequential. But I think there are times when filler can really add to a show. And Avatar, being the pinnacle of television that it is, does these types of episodes better than anyone else. For the most part.
Look, it's the Great Divide, the biggest canyon in the Earth Kingdom.
Let's keep flying.
Which is why I want to talk about one of my favorite episodes of Avatar, the beach. But first, I should address that this episode technically isn't filler, because the B-plot of the episode is the main gang facing off against Combustion Man for the first time, who becomes a minor antagonist for the rest of the season, so it does technically contribute to the overall plot. However, this is the B-plot and doesn't contribute anything to the A-plot, so it might as well be another episode. The A-plot, though, takes a page out of one of the all-time great anime tropes, the beach episode, because every anime needs a beach episode. The episode follows Zuko and his sister and her girl group as they go on a beach trip, and that's it. There's really not much more to this episode, plot-wise, but there's actually a lot this episode accomplishes narratively. For one, a lot of the episode focuses on Zuko dealing with his personal trauma, confronting his past and his loss of innocence, which is all great, but Zuko is the second most important character of the series, so he's already gotten plenty of that this season. So let's talk about the Spice Girls. This is the first time in the series we really get to see these characters spending time with each other. In Season 2, Azula's role was to be this calculating badass villain, while Tylee and May were there to do cool action sequences and occasionally provide comic relief. Which, don't get me wrong, they were all great in Season 2. Azula was and still is a great villain, but it's fun to see them in a different environment, both speaking in terms of the setting and narrative. We spent a whole season watching these teenage girls topple a kingdom, so what would it be like to watch them just hang out with other teenagers? The results are comedic gold. A lot of the humor in this episode comes from watching these hyper-focused villains hang out with the normies of the world. It reminds me a lot of the Kylo Ren SNL sketches.
Hearing that Zack lost his son really struck a nerve with me. Especially since I'm the one that killed him.
That's a sharp outfit, Chan. Careful, you could puncture the hull of an Empire-class Fire Nation battleship, leaving thousands to drown at sea. Because it's so sharp.
But outside of the comedy, there's still a lot going on narratively with these girls. For one, we examine the relationships they have with one another. It's interesting to see Azula's jealousy of Tylee, who fits in comfortably with these social situations, while she doesn't. This is the first time we see the uber-confident Azula shown to be insecure and unable to easily pick up on something, which reveals the big crack on her armor, Azula's inability to get close to people. She doesn't know how to interact with someone unless it's to get something out of them, and mistakes control with intimacy.
Well, what choice do I have? Trust is for fools. Fear is the only reliable way.
Which is to parallel her brother, the emotionally vulnerable Zuko. A trait that leads him into deeper and more intimate relationships that ultimately save his life. It's this episode that shifts Azula from being the cold, calculating villain she was in the second season to the tragic character we see by the end of the series. It's also the first time Azula opens up about her mother, revealing another layer of trauma that ultimately leads to her downfall. I also love that this moment is followed by a moment of comedy from Azula.
My own mother thought I was a monster. She was right, of course, but it still hurt.
Like, she can't be emotionally vulnerable for more than a few seconds, and she has to brush it off as a joke. It feels very human, and it's just fantastic writing. This whole scene is great though. Watching Kylie and May open up about their insecurities, well, we really get to see them as three-dimensional characters and not just the comic relief bad guys they were in previous episodes. Which is important, since both these characters are going to get happy endings in the finale, we need to start caring about them now. But there's just so much more to this scene that reveals character. May's dismissive attitude to everyone's feeling, Kylie focusing on a problem that seems trivial, Azula's smug satisfaction at everyone in the group falling apart, and the ultimate climax of the scene, Zuko's angry declaration about his self-hatred. It's all great, and leads to the China top of this episode, where the group wrecks the party of that douchey Fire Nation guy. It's fun to see these characters being the heroes of the episode, and ultimately overcome the conflict of the story, and I think that's why this episode is so important. It adds the tragedy of watching the ultimate fallout of these characters, because we know how satisfying it is to see them win. Watching Azula come close to being an actually good friend and open up to people is all the more heartbreaking to watch her fail when it matters the most. Without this episode, this moment doesn't hurt as much as it does. And yes, you could remove this episode from the series and you still have the Clips invasion, you still have Aang learning firebending, and you still have that amazing finale. But moments like these don't land as well as they do. When you spend your whole show having the characters and plot going down one narrow path, you lose out on seeing them in different situations that can reveal character and make them feel more three-dimensional, which is the major advantage that television has over other mediums. Take Arya and the Hound in Season 4 of Game of Thrones, aka the best thing the show ever did. This plotline could be removed from the show, you could skip it, and Arya would still become a faceless assassin, and the Hound would become some sort of monk, which is basically what happens in the books. But the show took the time to put these characters in a different situation to see them react and grow from it.
You're the worst shit in the Seven Kingdoms!
It's plenty worse than me. I just understand the way things are. How many stars they got to behead before you figure it out?
This whole arc is a big reason why these are two of the most popular characters in the series, and I wouldn't want to watch the show if it wasn't there. And that's why these episodes and stories are needed. They add depth and personality to the world and characters. Do you really want an Avatar without Secret Tunnel, or Tales from Ba Sing Se, or that Footloose episode? I know I wouldn't. Look at filler as the filler in a Twinkie. Sure, you could take out the creamy filling and you would still technically have a Twinkie. But ask yourself, do you really still want that Twinkie?